Well, for more, I'm joined here in the studio by France 24 senior reporter James Andre, who was following that speech along with me. James, I know you heard Joe Biden speaking yesterday at those big international commemorations on Omaha Beach. What struck you about today's speech and how it was different? I mean, it seemed very, very focused on this particular group of veterans.
Yeah, very much. I think what he tried to do is clearly use this imagery, this myth, these men, these incredible men that scaled that cliff back in the day. So he did start by describing what that was like. But his message, I think, was very much, you could sum it up in this message, to say, we make the solemn vow to never let them down. And he was using that to echo across history, saying that indeed they were summoning us, these men, that the modern generation should stay true to the values of what America stands for, to liberty, to democracy, to defending those notions both at home and abroad. And he said, does anyone doubt they would stand against Putin today? So that was a very clear message to Putin. Another interesting sentence, I'd say, was that I refuse to believe that US greatness is a thing of the past. Now, that obviously is a direct answer to Donald Trump's Make America Great Again slogan, saying that for him, America is still great, that it is still great thanks to what these men did 80 years ago, and that, he considers that this greatness is still here, that America still stands for freedom, for democracy, and does so across the world, which in itself is also a response to Donald Trump's policies and what Donald Trump's been, declaring over the recent months. It's a stark difference compared to his challenger in the US election, who, if you remember, said that he would allow Putin to attack any country who doesn't pay enough to NATO. So, yeah, he's using this, of course, to make a very clear message to American voters and also Vladimir Putin that America is still there, still stands, and that the legacy of what these men did would never disappear.
It's interesting, these speeches, because the messages in a way are very subtle, but then because of the context, they also feel quite obvious. James, in general, over these past couple of days, there's been commemorations, but at the same time, lots and lots of diplomacy going on.
Absolutely. Lots of diplomacy, lots of subtle messages that have been sent. Subtle and not subtle, where, the fact that the Russians are not invited is something very significant. It's probably the very first time this happens. And the Elysee Palace, I went to a briefing about this. They said that, the conditions were not acceptable to have the Russians represented during these ceremonies, though, of course, France does not deny the incredible role the Russians played in the liberation of Europe, as we all know. But, they said that, at the moment, it's impossible to invite them. Also, it was said that some gestures would be made during these, we've got to realize that these ceremonies are they go on for a whole week. Emmanuel Macron was in Bayeux. He delivered a speech. We have something which is a long process. And you've also got to realize, and we really saw this as we were driving across Normandy over the past 2 days, you've got ceremonies in every single town and village. You see people dressed up as American soldiers, as European soldiers, vintage military vehicles being driven around all over. So, this is the very visible tip of a very large iceberg when it comes to memory. But still, yes, of course, the Russians not invited is very symbolic. The Ukrainians invited is very symbolic as well. The fact that Volodymyr Zelensky was there, 25 heads of state and government that were present. Of course, the British, who were, the king who was present, gave a speech at Vers-sur-Mer, at the British Memorial. And all these heads of state converging on this Western position that no, they would not bow to Russia in Ukraine, that these values are incredibly important, and this is what's been hit home by all these leaders through their presence here, and also very concrete measures which have been announced. Joe Biden offered $225 million of aid to Volodymyr Zelensky this morning, also apologized for the delay in the previous aid package. Emmanuel Macron promised Volodymyr Zelensky some French fighter jets, Mirage 2000, and all the diplomacy that's going on behind closed doors, because obviously these men get a chance to actually see each other in the flesh and discuss.
Absolutely. All right, James, we're going to cross now to Ketavan Gorjistani, who's our former Washington correspondent and who has been at the Point du Hoc following Joe Biden's speech for us there. Ketavan, tell us what struck you about it.
Well, Joe Biden just wrapping up that speech in an iconic location, a symbolic location for what he wanted to talk about. He, of course, started by talking about those young men, those men who climbed those cliffs to take out those German position, 225 of them who were here. And he noted that he was the first president to make a speech with all of them actually gone, passing away, and mentioning the fact that, of course, this memory is slowly fading away. There was only one veteran here, but he had arrived at this location a little bit later, just a few days after D-Day. John Wardell, whom he recognized during the speech. And he also took a hard aim at Vladimir Putin, going back to the past and asking those questions, asking whether those men who climbed those cliffs would have wanted to America not to stand up to Vladimir Putin. He said, does anyone doubt that they wouldn't want America to stand up to Vladimir Putin? Does anyone doubt that they would want America to go it alone? So two really strong messages about the importance of America to be allied with its partners, with its European partners, and to be fighting the fight of democracy.